to be late. He was up in the soccer game. He was coming back.
He thought he'd be here for the general meeting.
Oh, okay.
But he was gonna try calling.
Did you send a call in to Counselor Henderson? Did he request one?
I can send one, it was on the calendar invitation.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said he'd try and call him, but he didn't know how much he'd participate because the traveling noise is kind of.
So if he's not in, I'll text him.
You're right.
Okay, we're up.
Ron, okay. Okay, welcome to our work meeting for March 13th. We started with review of this evening's agenda. Any changes, comments, anything about tonight? Okay, seeing none, item 2, future agenda items.
I'd like to, I don't know. I'd like to see us have a report at least once a month at our meetings that is updated, just continually a part of the packet once a month. That is kind of a state of the city report, that it would tell us kind of what's been going on in the city. We can see a delta from the month before, kind of thing, saying we issued this many building permits, this many businesses opened, we think this is the current population, this is how many, you know, just that kind of, just kind of like a, I don't know what the appropriate word, but like some benchmark, just numbers.
Almost like a dashboard.
Yeah, exactly, basically. Just something that would keep, some of those numbers handy reference and keep us apprised of, you know, where we're going.
Love it. I second that.
It may take us a bit of time to.
As we say, what kind of staff time do you think we're looking at? I'm just curious. 'Cause
I think once we get
We've been talking about creating a dashboard, that when we can get access to, if we're gonna be doing a formal report, it's really figuring out how we get it.
I don't even think it needs to be a report, it just needs to be like included in the packet, just something we can look at.
Summary.
Yeah, just, yeah, you know.
As I said, it's more of like a printout of a dashboard. Okay, probably have to do that the second meeting of the month because a lot of our stuff trails in.
Okay.
The first part we probably wouldn't have it, and then we'll always be,
We can be
there's no way to get them all
I-
into it. I'm just thinking about the things you might wanna
It
see.
really doesn't matter when it is, it's just what happened from last month to this month, right, changes. We opened this many businesses, we issued this many building permits, we, you know.
Or even upcoming projects like Harriman Main Street's gonna be closed, or construction starts there, like big projects, not.
Any, key notices, stuff like that, you know. Just, I think it would consolidate a lot of information that we're chasing or sending off one-off
And we might be
emails and asking
doing
things and.
staff time on those emails rather than,
saving staff
yeah,
time.
saving
Yeah,
staff time
that's-
there,
that's
yeah.
what-
question we may be asking
Yeah.
our staff.
Yeah.
And I understand there's probably work to assemble that and get a baseline, but then the update shouldn't be that difficult.
No, it wouldn't, so what I'm thinking is it'd probably be a little bit iterative, we'll send you stuff and say, well, what about this? Cause
Yeah.
we're gonna made a quick list, we may come up with others, but there may be other things you want to know that we hadn't thought of, so. Yeah, we can do something with that. Shelley.
Mayor, may I go back to 1.1 really quick?
Yes,
I made a couple technical changes on the broadband ordinance. I did some printouts and those changes are in red on them. But I just wanted you to be aware that there are just some minor differences on that and I'll hand it out in paper form.
okay. Thank you, Todd.
So I was talking with Mary earlier this week, with the changes of our meeting, of how we're putting more items on general meeting, and we may have to break it up depending on what the agenda is and longevity of drinks, water, bathroom breaks, whatever, so it doesn't look like, this is more of an informal setting, you can get up and kind of walk around and get something.
So a recess.
Yeah,
kinda.
maybe
Have a sauntering break,
a saunter a little, yeah.
put that in the middle of the agenda, saunter.
I'm getting shirts, I'm sorry. Don't bother me.
It's gonna have a sloth on there. Be awesome. But just something like that, I mean, obviously that's up to the mayor. So.
Yeah, I mean, if it gets long, then I think that'll be
It's just a
necessary.
little red button to push, right? It's break time.
Just go
I know we've all kind of talked about it offline, do we wanna try to, I wanted to check on the work meeting for the chambers. I think I think everybody wants to see both chambers kind of have a chance to present at this point. Do we want to do it for 2 weeks, or do we want to do it for 4?
We were just, what do we have, what's the budget, which one's up next?
I believe it's community development.
So it's engineering, building,
Economic development.
okay.
I haven't talked to either group
How
yet. to
how
give a
long
date.
do you wanna get, I'm just trying to.
I would
make
only
sure
give them like 5 minutes each. I don't want.
we can do it next meeting if you want,
But he's not
In
gonna
the
be
work
here.
meeting?
in the work meeting.
Oh, you're not here.
Oh, you won't be here, do you wanna wait until April 10th?
I'm okay.
Either one.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay in missing that one, cause I've been in some of those.
Oh, yes, we'll just, staff's just gonna, it doesn't matter which meeting.
Okay, if you've got, I'll reach out and try to, I'll see if they can both come. Okay.
Should we get extra police presence out there? Crips in the Bloods or Sharks in the Jets shout out or something?
Then I just can't, that's, I mean, if we want to do, that's just FYI, that's just their information.
Oh, so the one,
If we wanted, I don't know, so do we need that for a packet? I don't know, anyways, I just,
I think at this point, we would just let them come and make their presentation, and then it's a work meeting. We then schedule it the next meeting for council to talk in a regular meeting, decide.
Yeah.
I'll call them.
Just, one other, and I don't know when or how we would put this on an agenda, or if it would need to be a separate meeting of a certain kind, but, Nathan and I were talking earlier this week about the concept of it's not a strategy session. I don't know what language we came up with. It's not that,
It's more of, so, since we don't do formal retreats, it's how do you start to have some of a less structured, so it's not, here's their staff report, making a decision, but it's more council talking about the challenges and the things that they see and how they want to prioritize those. So we're actually gonna talk about it at our next executive team meeting to see how do we start to, how would we incorporate that, so.
the general purpose behind that concept is that I feel like very often we're making decisions that are in a vacuum and or are urgent in needing of a decision, but aren't necessarily aren't being made inside of a broader framework or a broader plan of things, right? And we can use whatever words we want, but I think that if you ask us generally speaking, I think we have fairly unified ideas about some of the things we'd like to see, but saying is, we're gonna put a flagpole for a sports facility. Is that what we wanna do? And what would be the challenges and opportunities associated with that, right? Those kind of things. We just don't ever have that kind of a freewheeling conversation where all of us can get together. One-on-one, we have conversations,
Yeah.
whatever, but to get us all together and have that, I think could be fruitful.
It's the same like when we're passing, like an MDA for that area, and all we ever do is see that area. And it's like, that's a beautiful concept. Can you zoom out and let me see the impact it has on all the area around, right? It's the same concept. We have to zoom out and see the full picture of the choices that we make.
Yeah.
And we're usually problem driven on correction and
Yeah,
instead
exactly.
of forward thinking.
Reactive instead of proactive, right? I mean, you can cliche it to death, but it's just making sure that we have
Yeah.
an opportunity to talk about, because I think we all see maybe some challenges in the city, and because they're kind of things that we notice necessarily, we're not advancing those or bringing them and say, this is the area we'd like to focus on, or these are things we think are important. So, anyway.
It's also a chance
We were just
for, again,
spitballing.
less formal, when I say less, stop that, less structure, it's not, here's your staff report, here are the things we have answered. This would really be more of an open conversation where maybe you start with one question and you kind of work as a council, just talk and, I've done that in other places, usually as part of a retreat, you don't have to do it as a retreat. So
Go to Park City?
I even think things like, I think we've all kind of talked a little bit, like, where do we want to put a future fire station? Where do we want
Yeah.
to put the public works yard? If
Yeah.
arts is, the arts
All
people are
of that
still
stuff,
asking,
yeah.
like, where, we want to have a goal to do an arts, what's our vision as a council
Kind
of
of
what to
timeline
do?
with,
Is it, you know, because now we've got offers
space.
from some few different people. What is our vision? Because I may have something that's different than, you know,
Yeah, I
some
mean-
thoughts
Right.
about it.
Right.
But that's where we need to get unified, so we're not getting different messaging.
Well, and it helps us as staff, sometimes we're like moving down this path, and then it's, oh, this is the priority, oh, okay, and now we're doing this, and then, and after a while, when you do that, you end up like the Swiss Army knife.
Spoked wheel, yeah.
You do a little of everything, but you're not really great at any of them,
Yeah.
so.
And maybe even with the changes to our meeting, we might have a half an hour where we can pick a topic and go down that. I don't know if
Yeah,
that
we
works.
were gonna kind of brainstorm next week.
Timing and
things
We,
like
we
that.
just, there's some, we're kind of planting some seeds in each other's minds about how this might come together. And as we talked about it, we kind of thought this could really be useful for us as a council. I think it'd really benefit staff in making some administrative decisions that are, you know, really aligned with what we want to accomplish as a city, that kind of stuff.
Love it.
It's gonna work.
And then, you know, there's an election and they tear it up and start over, so.
It's true. Okay, I like it. Okay, anything else? Okay,
That's it, sorry.
no, I like it. Council discussion of future citizen recognition.
I just have one comment about that process. We're doing them one at a time, getting down at the dais, going down, taking pictures, getting back up, doing another one, getting down, off, taking pictures, doing it. Can we find a more efficient way to do that? So that it's not 45 minutes and
So do them all,
and
two
up and
pictures
down
all
and
at
up
the
and
end.
down and up and down, something like that, maybe? Just, hey, recognize you, thank you, that's great. We're also recognizing so-and-so, that's great. We're like, so-and-so, we'd like to all stick around, we'd like to take some pictures.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I would like that better.
Okay.
Done.
Cleaner's better.
I like that, how you get your steps in, but what else?
You gotta come to our side, there's a ramp, you don't need to
Yeah, no, I don't have to go downstairs, ha ha ha.
One, item two,
I know where you live, man.
discussion of the 2025-2026 budgets requested for legislative, legal, human resources, IT, and communication departments. Kyle.
Thank you. Before we start, I do want to recognize we have our HR manager and then IT director here. So as we discuss our budgets, they are here to answer questions. Of course, we're all here as staff too, as we go through this. Want to make sure, okay, so we're gonna first start with IT and communications. So they are a department of 6, as you can see, communications is 3 and then IT is 3. Org chart is there. Just as of note, in fiscal year 24, they did have an approved position for an additional IT technician that was eliminated when we did our budget reductions last year. So in IT, the personnel increase is being requested. There's a career ladder that's being requested, then one market adjustment. There are a few operating increases, most of them are one time, so there are some conference room computers that need to be replaced, department computers, other components and upgrades, and then copy machine buyouts. So the IT director has found with the buyout price that's being offered through our leasing company, it makes a lot more sense financially to buy these machines out because they usually have very few copies on them and they still have a lot of life left, and it makes sense given the low price that we're being offered by the leasing companies, so.
Do we still get, is there a service contract cost? 'Cause
I
it's buyed out.
believe so.
No, it's not.
Yeah, so we pay a service contract regardless of whether we lease our own machine.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so.
Great.
And then 26, the IT manager director was asking for was some inflationary increases. There were a few one-time requests. One is department computers, some components and upgrades, and then they did have a new employee request in 26. They wanted to replace that IT technician that had been eliminated. As we had previously mentioned, the city manager, when he presents his tentative budget to the council, he's not going to have any personnel increases in there. But I did put, there was that request from the IT director.
It's only 2,300.
That's
That's
Oh,
just the extra.
That's for the computer for the person.
Yep. I wish it was only 23.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
that's
that's awesome.
that'd probably be a different discussion.
Get two of those guys.
Are you,
Oompa
he's using
Loompas
the
or
copy
something,
machine,
yeah.
copy paste.
Community things, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about. It does show quite a large operating decrease. That number is probably not as large as that number. The communications manager informed me I've got a formula error in the spreadsheet I used to calculate everything. There's still a budget reduction. I didn't have time to go and recalculate the numbers, but as you can see, there's broad reductions across all of the items. And then in 26, the increases really are just for inflation, and then the one time is for a computer replacement. Moving on to legal and HR, so it's also another department of 6. So there's 3 in the city attorney's office, and then 3 in HR. The HR department had recommended market adjustments for 2 of the 3 employees in the attorney's office. As you can see, their operating is requested to decrease about $3,500, so they weren't asking for additional money there. I did put some of the larger operating expenditures in the attorney. So one is our outside legal counsel, so that's when the city attorney needs some additional help or it's a specialty that he needs to contract out for. And then indigent defense is $60,000. And then in 26, there was an inflationary increase request, but it's only $430. Moving on to HR, so the HR manager had requested career ladders for 2 of his employees. The increase is mainly due to liability insurance increase. Prior year, we actually in current fiscal year, we actually went over our budget, so the HR manager looked at what that budget should be. So he requested an additional $40,000, which is in line with what's happening in the market right now. And then 26, the increases were an additional $10,000 for an expected increase in liability insurance, and then he also asked for an additional $5,000 in hospitality and promotion. With that, one of the largest items in the HR budget is our employee program. So I did do this table just showing what we're actually doing for our employees and the costs. So as you can see, it varies from Lagoon Day at the top. Includes holiday gift certificates, tuition reimbursement. So as you can see, we spend about $150,000 a year just on employee appreciation of those employee programs.
Are we having a lot of employees take part of that tuition reimbursement?
So we get about 4 or 5 a year. We have a max of $4,000 per year per employee. So we're getting, we're averaging about 4 a year.
And then moving on to your budget, legislative budget. One thing I did want to discuss with the council, and I did give you a handout on this, is HR, when they did their market survey, did identify that the mayor and council salaries were below market. So he did recommend an increase, which of course, now that I'm on the spot, I've forgotten the amount. It's $4,000 a year for each council member, and then $11,000 a year for the mayor's salary. So that would bring it to the market average, which is shown on that handout. In addition to that, I did want to point out some of the larger items in your budget. So one is the youth council, which is about $17,750. Our legislative consultants, our lobbyists of $146,500. So that number hasn't changed from the prior year. ULCT is about 37.5. The Butterfield scholarships, as we had discussed earlier, about 2,900. There's one that deferred, so it's a little higher this year compared with last year. In the past, there has been money in your budget for other sponsorships, so this would be if a group came in requesting a sponsorship, this is where we would pay that out of. There's also a line item in economic development if it's more related to economic development. And then another one I know, the city manager.
Can you clarify for that? Would the the shield be, the rugby shield thing, would that be out of this, or do we have a separate line item for that?
That would probably come partly out of this, partly out of that.
Yeah, cause it's a big amount.
Got it, okay.
We've already done that for 24.
No,
We did 22 and 23, but we haven't.
we've got, the communications has been helping me get the grant worksheet online, and I don't know if we've got the website up yet. The form is done, the spreadsheet is done,
Should be pretty close.
and so as soon as that's done, we'll get it out to those folks and say, if you're gonna ask for money in the
This is
next
the
2
process.
years, this is the process, and that, so you can see everyone. That's what they need to see too.
Does our ULCT cover our biannual or semi-annual retreat fees too? That's all on top of that?
No,
our
that's
base
just your
package.
registration, or not registration, that's our
just
membership.
Our fee. We have a separate travel line item for those.
That used to be split amongst a bunch of departments, we've just consolidated it into one.
Okay.
So it's easier to see what we're actually.
Our portion went up as we.
It's based on population and your portion of sales tax, I think, it's kind of a strange formula. The last one there, which Kyle hadn't talked about yet, the Riverton Senior Bus, I sent you all an email about that. Riverton's asking, sent us an invoice saying it's 35,000, our fair share. We've never had an agreement, it's just that we've been donating $5,000 towards the bus since Mayor Freeman was in office, so I don't know how long ago that was, 2013,
2 mayors
2014.
ago.
So what's the ramifications if we say no to the 35,000 versus the 5,000?
Well-
It's my understanding they get money from the county to run the facility, and so does that cover transportation for our residents? Are we double paying, or what's the situation?
So that would be part of my concern with their request, is they show $120,000, but there's no breakout of what Riverton's costs are.
Yeah.
If we're paying for their building, that's their facility, their asset, that if the county went away, they're doing it, our residents are also county residents. So there's a lot, if we want to increase it, we should do it, but doesn't mean, my recommendation is that we do sit down and if we're gonna do this, we should do something formal with them so that it's not, hey, we think our costs are higher, send us this money. Cause that's where we're at right now.
Or even send any money, but just because somebody agreed to it in the past, we should understand why we're sending it.
And it was always it's always been a donation. So now that we've gotten an invoice, it's a little strange to get an invoice like this.
Yeah, especially now if we can move towards having some of our senior
Events.
activities in our own community, then the question is, do we wanna continue to participate in funding that?
It's a good point.
Also wanna make one point about this, I don't wanna cause any offense or ruffle any feathers. But I know when, for the legislative consultants, people say, what do we get for that money? We got $10.5 million this year, right? I mean, there's a distinct return on that investment for the city that's justifies that expense. I'm not sure what we got for our $37,500 with the league. I continue to see cities' rights and controls being eroded. The state usurping our legislative authority. I don't see the league being consistently defending and keeping red lines on some of these things. And I think maybe they should come and have to give this council a report on what we got for that. We don't get to elect who the leadership is. I mean, I got some questions about that. And our continued involvement in an organization that's not working to protect us.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I question that really often, how much of a benefit we're really receiving from them. There's a substantial investment there. With absolutely no accountability.
That's the problem I have, is that we don't have any ability to direct the leadership. We don't elect them. They appoint whoever they want, and they're using our money to cover those activities. That's not okay. It's like taxation without representation.
I
It's the
also
same thing we-
heard a rumor, and for now it's just rumor, but there are some other people looking into perhaps doing another organization that would be in somewhat of a competitive nature to the league, which I think would be excellent, because I think anytime there's a competition, it introduces, you have to become more accountable. You have to earn your money rather than really only option.
I would agree. I don't know what the other organization is.
Yeah.
But I just think maybe a future agenda item, we should have some league representation come and address some of those questions. And again, I don't wanna cause offense or upset or ruffle feathers, but that's 37,000 of taxpayers' money and their city's getting weaker, so.
Yeah, I think it's always important to know it's not personal, it's about, we're doing business, show me the value you bring in as a business to us.
And then finally, I did just want to give you a roadmap of where we'll be going to the tentative and final budget. So as we mentioned earlier, so community development will be on the 27th. Then the departments get progressively larger and more complex. So April 10th will be Parks Recreation events. 24th will be Public Works. May 1st, we have to have the tentative budget available for inspection, which is a week before adoption. After that will be public safety and then the CIP. I'm hoping by the 8th we'll have a clearer picture on what property tax will look like. That's why they got pushed so close to the end. And then June 12th would be budget adoption, as long as there's not a tax increase. And with that, are there any questions or comments?
No, I keep
Sounds
saying
good.
if there's not a tax increase, but are you anticipating proposing a tax increase?
That's well, I'll put it this way, it really depends on what the council's priorities are to fund. Police really is going to be what the property tax number comes in at, what that increase actually looks like, to know if it'll be able to cover proposed salary increases, so.
It would be more in line with the HCC tax increase.
Right, the safety enforcement area, I should clarify, it would
Yeah.
be that would be increasing its tax.
The hard part with the city one is it's, in order to really cover some of these, that you'd be like doubling your
Yeah.
tax rate.
200% tax rate to have, do an extra road.
Yeah.
There is a public policy argument that maybe it should increase because it's losing its purchasing power and you can dedicate it, but I don't know that right now, we have not talked at all about needing to do that. Maybe as we talk about capital, that is something the council says, yes, we do need to put some more money towards some of these things, so we would do it, but that would be the only thing.
Yeah, when I look at the numbers, it's like, makes no sense to me, there's just not enough volume there, but I just want to clarify that if we're talking about it, it's more in line with the HCC to make sure our police officers are covered.
And when we talk about the PD, so in our plan, you'll actually probably see the tentative budget before we cover PD. But it's just because we won't have the property tax numbers until after we have it. So Kyle, right now the plan is you'll actually have two different public hearings for this budget, one at tentative and one at final instead of just one. You can choose not to do that, but that's kind of our plan right now.
Okay.
And so hopefully when we get to that, we'll have better numbers from the county, we'll know where we're at with the.
Can you bring that calendar back up, the timeline? Okay, so we have from May 8th to June 12th. Okay, sorry, just wanted to verify that.
Yeah, and the public safety is the same day you get the tentative budget, but it's because we probably, that's when they don't release the property tax numbers till
it's till June, but I'm hoping there'll be enough data collected in the system that I'll be able to at least get a better estimate.
I know we kind of we just kind of went through it real fast. Is this a recommendation from HR or is this?
So we analyze our positions throughout the city every year to see where we're at on market.
So do we wanna have this conversation now? I mean, this is kind of,
It's up to you. I mean, at some point, you don't wanna get too far behind. But there's a public hearing process that we have to do. Actually, we have to do that now for any of your executive staff too, assistants.
right,
Don't know if they have to be the same or if I think they have to be different.
Have to be different.
They have to be different, so we'll be having multiple public hearings, same night, but, we'll open and close and open and close.
so I guess I'll just ask council, are you guys wanting to look at this? Are you good where we're at?
I totally understand the reasoning behind this. It's always important to try and stay in line with what's going on. These positions are interesting to fill when you can't even keep up with what's the market. But when I look up here and know that we need employees and we have a freeze on that to continue to run our city, it's really hard for me to say yes to an increase on that side of it. It's very conflicting.
I wonder if there's a different approach to where if you do make these adjustments, you hold them in lieu until next election or something at that effect, rather than implementing, and use that budget for employees or other, I'm not sure what that looks like or if it's allowed,
So you make the effective date later.
some potential.
So I've always said, that's been my take, you know, when everybody was asking me to say you worked last year, you know, you're low, well,
But we stay,
I know where I was signing
Competitive,
up for
yeah.
though, too. I knew what it was. I don't think I understood the time,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Like you
You
did?
thought you understood, like.
but I knew the pay, and to Sherry's point, I mean, that's where I don't know if the timing's tough for me right now, a little bit,
especially when we're cutting events or not putting on events as past, cause we're trying to be tighter in our budget and do those things.
I always said I would propose something like this on my way out, you know, so the next person, cause I know what it takes now. I would propose
So,
something like this on the
you're
way
saying
out.
if you get reelected, then
No, I
you
wouldn't even
wouldn't
do
want
it. I don't.
I mean, that's the problem, you're only doing it on your way out.
It could be 8 years, 12 years,
Yeah,
20
correct.
years.
As of after
Yeah.
yesterday, it's only.
And I think we have to look at with eliminating our personal interest in it, we have to look at it more broad and say, does a council person, should they be in line with that? I personally think you have to eliminate your own personal bias.
Yeah, the hardest part is, I look at, the past budgets that, I've been here, and we have had, and I think that are proposed in this, is there's career ladder and market adjustments for
Yeah.
positions all throughout the city, right?
Yes.
And we do that on a regular basis, not to enrich anybody, but to keep pace, like there's inflationary costs that happen. This one feels a little different because we're not approving somebody else's raise, we'd be approving our own, right, which is a weird thing to be voting for. But I don't think that was it $4,400 a year or something like that, I don't think this is egregious, I don't think it's,
$4,010,
yeah.
roughly.
So, I think that's reasonable, I certainly know this isn't a profitable return on investment for the time I'm putting into it for sure. I don't think $4,400 is going to suddenly make it that either. But it is, time away from our families and on behalf of the citizens and going to committee meetings and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's inappropriate and I don't think it's abusive and I don't think it's necessarily I don't know.
And that's what I said, I just was,
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking, I just didn't know.
I think it's in line and I think it would be an appropriate adjustment. That's kind of where
I
I'm at.
guess if you think about all the places that you drive to for different committees and different things that I don't ever turn on the gas receipt, you know what I mean? It's like It's like,
The only time I've ever done it is when Kyle calculated the league
And send
the
it to
meetings
us.
and sent it to us and said, so it is from City Hall, okay?
and that was
You know,
actually,
it just
that was
did it.
actually very nice. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I don't have to
But I've
worry about
never
turning
submitted
that
a
in.
mileage reimbursement for anything ever, right? It's
Neither.
just, none of us are approach this position like that. And
Not to say that you shouldn't turn in a mileage
I
receipt,
know.
it's just that it's just like, it's fine.
so I completely understand the reluctance to do something that feels like it's self-interesting, right? Like that you're, rewarding yourself or increasing your own salary, which it very much literally is that. But on the other hand, like Sherry said, it's just something, we're making a decision about that position and what the compensation for that position should be in, you know, a little bit of an impersonal way. Not only for us, but, you know,
For the next
election
us.
coming up in
Yeah.
20 months, whatever it is.
Okay, we'll think about it then.
And
Okay.
it's in there, it'll, so right now, we'll include it in the budget when you actually adopt the budget, you can make your decision. You'll actually have to do a.
It's
hearing.
calculated in there for us so that we understand that.
Correct, it's in there right now.
Are there any other market adjustments or career ladder adjustments that we aren't approving? For the city, are we generally including those in the budget?
The market and career so a career ladder is not a guarantee, right? If
Sure.
if we anticipate somebody's hitting the triggers in
Yeah,
their
they
job
get a
description,
degree or
that
they do something, yeah.
they'll move up, so we try to include those so that we're not scrambling.
Diligent.
The market adjustments, Travis is looking at those annually, so those are all in there. The part we're talking about where is new employees, we're not gonna add head count.
Yeah.
And you couldn't add.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying, it's not this
Yeah,
massive
no, no.
amount of money, right?
good point. For
What
sure.
altogether, it's
$20,000.
$27,000 or $28,000.
And as
I
a
mean,
general rule, we're approving COLAs, merit, those types of
Right.
things, so this is kind of the same cost of living increase type of thing.
Curious, when was the last time there was an adjustment to mayor and council salaries?
5 or 6 years, cause I was on the council.
Mr. Mayor Watts, for sure.
And then
So it's probably been 4 years.
Before I.
It was before I was here, so you made some adjustments, right, but that was just restructuring
Right,
back
that-
to
Exactly what it was before.
where you were before, yeah.
Yeah, I was on the council, so.
Five, 6 years seems like, that's probably why it's bigger, is cause it hasn't been adjusted in quite a while. I don't know, it's something you wanna do every
Well, like I said,
year
I just
or
hadn't
every
talked,
other
I just
year.
didn't know where everybody's thoughts were, and I
And
didn't
there
know,
were
I hadn't
some-
talked to anybody about it.
Pretty other cities did some pretty big jumps in the last year, and so that also, cause we had looked at it, 2 years ago or something like that, and we were still in line, but then a bunch of cities did some jumps, so you're always kinda, we try to do ours at the same time every year, look at it, just to be consistent. So if they jump after us, we may miss it for a year.
Yeah, and we're 5-member council, all these others are 6-member councils, paying more,
That's right.
we're saving money.
Right. Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Thank you, Kyle. 2.2, presentation and discussion of proposed amendments to Title 10.
I'm backing up because of the fireballs coming.
Michael.
Okay, we're ready to take this to planning commission for a public hearing. Talked with a few city council members on this over the last few months and also with Todd, just checking in to make sure that we're not doing anything that would expose us to some challenges, some legal challenges on limiting specific land uses within our city. So just as a reminder, our land development code, we do have purpose statements, and I do find a couple of these statements are consistent with this proposal of limiting specific commercial land uses in our city. Obviously, we have an objective of promoting our prosperity. We want to make sure that we have good orderly land use, and we want to ensure that we're protecting the interests of present and future residents and businesses, as well as our tax base. So kind of the guiding objectives that I've had in my mind as I've been working on how to structure this is We wanna promote property values and opportunities for tax revenues that go to pay for our city services. We want land uses that provide jobs in the city. And also, what are those services that we want, right? We wanna make sure they're accessible, they're convenient, maybe there's some services that are missing. So specifically, we're talking about car washes and credit unions. And I'm proposing that we define or redefine car wash as a self-service car wash. And that we make those self-service car washes only allowed as an accessory use moving forward. So if there is Holiday Oil and they wanna have a car wash, that would be an accessory use, that would be fine. But a full-on separate self-service car wash generally it's not a high employment center. And because it's a self-service car wash, there really aren't any tax revenues, significant tax revenues that come from that, other than property tax. Cause there would be obviously improvements on property, but it's not a higher category potentially for tax revenues for us. And we could create a new category for a full-serve car wash, where then we would have opportunities for some tax revenue collection. If there are employees actually touching the car, drying the car, doing detailing on the car. Also, a lot of these full-service car washes are selling product. So there is an opportunity to collect tax revenues from that type of service, as well as they tend to have higher employment. You know, they will hire many employees compared to a self-service car wash. And it's a service that we don't currently have. We don't have a full-service car wash in our community. So the idea would be to still allow full-service car wash, but restrict self-serve as an accessory use. Credit unions, looked at whether or not to restrict it by proximity or by population. Based on our existing count in the city, I'm proposing that we limit one credit union per 20,000 residents, which really locks us into the credit unions that we currently have in the city.
Why would you only choose credit unions and not banks?
Because they're nonprofit and they don't pay property tax.
Okay.
Whereas a bank does.
Yeah, yeah. Now, so this is the location of our existing credit unions and car washes. As you can see, they're all here on the north end of the city. I apologize, I missed the label of Mountain America Credit Union there off of 134th.
Would you consider Quick Quack as self-serve?
Yes.
I think so, because they don't offer the full-on, I mean, you drive through the tunnel and you vacuum it yourself, you dry it yourself.
But not like a whole
Yeah, I would consider that, and we would define that. I think that's a self-serve. Now, these are all of the commercial zones within the city potentially where we allow these different land uses. Now, looking at this, quite a few of these are already vested under MDAs. And so there would be a question, in fact, I've identified some questions as far as moving forward to the planning commission, if that's still the interest of the council. Should automatic or self-serve car washes be limited as an accessory land use? Does that still kind of resonate? You're still interested in doing that?
Yes.
And that doesn't mean you can't change your mind, of course, but just in general, that's the draft that we're moving forward to the planning commission right now.
Sorry, but we can go back one slide.
Yeah.
So what about if you live way out here? That's a long ways to a car wash. Why wouldn't we allow a car wash to be down here for all these billion residents?
And that is an option. Instead of doing a population ratio, we could do a proximity ratio.
It just
If
feels
you're
like
interested in doing that.
because obviously there's gonna be a lot of homes down here and cars. So, but they have to all go to there to use the car wash. It just seems like those are all clustered right
Yeah.
there. It just seems like, why would we say you couldn't have a car wash in this area?
Again, we could do it with a gas station, or, you know, presumably it'd be a gas station, right?
There's one at the Holiday
Yeah.
down there,
Yeah,
Yeah, there's one across the street in Bluffdale,
yeah,
then there's the one in Riverton as well,
right.
the Mister. So,
And there's a couple I know that have been
It's half the price.
looked at in our MDAs also in that area already. And again, they would be allowed to move forward on those, even if we make this change.
I was
So
gonna
if it's
ask
an
that, yeah.
MDA, they can move forward whether they want it or
Unless we talk about changing that in a future MDA amendment.
not. Got you.
And then should full service car washes, have a proximity or population restriction? Right now, the draft I'm proposing doesn't have that. It would just be, let's try and get one. And then if we feel like we
One's too many,
don't want
two's
another
many.
one. Another idea, as I've talked with operators, is should we beef up our water reclamation standards? I understand a lot of car washes are doing this initially, especially the branded car washes. It's kind of their industry standard. However, I'm told that some of them will disable some of those functions because they are a little bit spendy to maintain.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't maintain them so that they work efficiently. So we could include standards on that. I've been researching that.
Yeah.
St. George includes this, for example. And then again, should we maybe move from a population ratio and look more at a proximity? Would you rather see that on credit unions or just do the 1 per 20,000?
Same argument, it's like if I live clear down there, I know what grocery stores I go to just because they're convenient,
Yeah.
right? It's the same with the bank.
I think
or anything like
proximity-
that.
And we could allow them still potentially, like in a grocery store, like in a secondary accessory use.
Yeah, that'd be good.
We could modify
It's
that.
actually good for the primary use too, because it brings in
Traffic.
additional
Okay.
traffic to them.
And then I must admit, this caught me by surprise, but I didn't realize that banks and credit unions were allowed in our old RM zone, the R 2043, but maybe that's not a bad thing. That we're seeing residential land being used for banks and credit unions, but
Houses.
you guys are okay with that? Okay.
Do we have any banks in that zone currently? So, yeah.
Like, I think that
Not right now.
whether it's a population ratio or whatever, the idea is they just all get packed in right next to each other and
Yeah.
they're not
Spread out.
tax generating, right?
Yeah.
Cause at the beginning you talked about, we wanna provide services that are needed. And if you're gonna put in, 5,000 houses in the south end of town, they're gonna need some services, right? They're gonna need a bank
Right.
down there,
The
they're gonna
bank,
need the
credit
car
union.
wash down there. So it's not just saying we don't want them in the city anywhere, it's just, there's so many right next to each other, you know, that's where it starts to become, I think problematic. The residents complain about stuff like that. They're like,
Right.
what are we, if it's a chicken place, a bank, a dentist, or a car wash, that seems to be
about
most of
dentists?
what every new business that opens is,
How come dentist isn't on the list?
They pay property.
And-
They pay property tax.
Yeah.
So
and we-
anybody that doesn't car washes pay property tax?
They don't,
Yeah.
it's not a point of sale tax.
They don't
Yes, they do
generate
pay
retail sales
tax.
property
Oh,
tax.
Dentists
but-
don't do point of sale tax.
No.
So the only
But
thing
we could, I mean, like, except
I'm
there
just
could be
asking.
other land uses that if you'd like to limit.
I'm just asking, cause it seems like we have a lot.
Yep.
I don't know that, there should be some analysis of how many we wanna license in the city, that kind of a thing,
Or
right?
spread them out, the same idea, like
Yeah.
spread
That's-
out a little.
Cause I had asked Mike about this, a year ago or whatever, to say, is there some way we can find to help alleviate this issue that happens, right?
Yeah.
And, especially like companies, businesses that aren't generating sales tax revenue, unless they're providing a really necessary service that is missing from either a part of town or missing from the city all over, I think there should be pretty limited,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I don't know, you can put in probably 10 more dentists for the activity we got going on.
Maybe.
For right now.
But,
Yeah, right now, in 10 years, 15 years, it might be different.
but to Sherry's point, I think some of this is easy for developers. It just becomes easy, so that if they can bring in,
Yeah.
I mean, not to fault our friends, the Gus, but they were, at planning commission, they excitedly announced, they were under contract with Chartway Credit Union over
Right.
by, they were all excited to tell me at this, I'm like, that does nothing for me. Like, they don't get that's why we're
It
frustrated.
doesn't help them
about-
either. It doesn't help their,
It might be an anchor spot for them to get.
They're selling the land.
Yeah, selling the land.
Yeah.
I could see, I'd probably lean towards more proximity
there's no tiff there.
of like, for that, especially in the south end, I don't wanna disenfranchise them saying, well, we can't put a credit union in, but that's who we've got coming to the table, but if they know in this 2 mile area, they can only do one credit union, they're gonna chase a good credit union.
Yeah.
And get that credit union to pull the trigger quicker than,
Yeah, the reason why I did not put the proximity as my first proposal, because we make this change, we're still going to see our MDA partners be able to still do car washes and credit unions.
we have to look at that
Unless
development in
we,
a microscope, like, yeah.
unless
so
we
see.
wanna put this on the table for any time we're looking at amendments to our MDAs, like, do we wanna
They'd have to
include
comply
this
to
as
the
a
new.
limitation?
Yeah.
So that's why I was doing a ratio, cause it locks it down basically. But we
Unless
know
they're
we're
the
probably
MDA.
gonna get some in the south end of the city through Wasatch's
Wasatch,
Academy
DAI,
Village project,
Academy
yeah,
Village,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That's
So-
more clarity.
It looks like we're still good to move forward. We're gonna take this to a planning commission public hearing in April, and I'll be back before you also in April for potential action then.
I wonder if on that, dashboard you were thinking about, what types of businesses and how many we have? There you go.
I think that's probably easy to, that's
already
probably
on
easy
that,
to
yeah.
combine.
It's probably, we probably have that information on a spreadsheet somewhere, but.
Okay,
Thanks, Mike.
thank you, Michael. And that stuff all, we're good to do that, I mean, there's no
Yep.
code that, state code that prohibits us from doing stuff like that.
I've done some research and
Not
Todd
yet.
has been comfortable with this approach, so.
Okay,
It just goes in line with proper planning, right? It's just
that's
like-
what I think too.
Yeah, I've read the comments about Hammond's City of Credit Unions. Oh, what's that going on in Camp Corner? Oh, it's gonna be a credit union or a car wash.
Yeah.
Tacos on, Bank on Main, tacos on Main.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. 2.3, legislative session wrap-up. Todd?
Thanks, Mayor. I just have a couple bills that I wanted to talk about. Some of them I know you know about, but I wanted to go through a little bit of the details on some of them. Other ones I wanted to just inform you. So HB 13, this is the Infrastructure Financing District. These are very similar to PIDs, but they operate a little bit differently. With a PID, they have to have it's in the control of the city to approve them. With infrastructure financing districts, the board is an independent board based on the property owners there. But they don't have condemnation authority and they don't have taxing authority. It's just a mechanism for the developer to obtain financing on the private bond market. One change that
They don't have taxing authority, then how does that benefit them in their bond approvals?
I had our monthly meeting with the municipal attorneys in Utah just yesterday, and we had Randy from Gilmore Bell, Randy Larson, give a summary of this bill, and he thinks that these infrastructure financing districts are probably not gonna be widely used, just because it might be there for a couple projects, but nothing in probably our city. But that is out there, and one thing with a new law is the minor changes that will make, that could potentially make an effect on the city, like if they decide to have taxing authority, so they're making a minor change, so that's always something that we're gonna be looking for. HB 36, this is an Open and Public Meetings Act amendment, and I just wanted you to be aware that there's a new section that states individuals constituting a quorum of a public body may not act together outside a meeting in a concerted and deliberate way to predetermine an action to be taken by the public body at a meeting on a relevant matter. They define relevant matter as something that you have authority over, but have a couple of exclusions. I'm kind of curious to see how this plays out, because what will this do as far as trying to come to an understanding without going to 6 different public meetings to have the open discussion? rather than one or two in an open discussion. They could be long, but what they're trying to do is fix where cities are evading the Open and Public Meetings Act, so they added this language to try to stop that.
They can do it all they want, but as cities, we're not allowed to. It's
Yes,
just-
right.
The hypocrisy is ridiculous.
HB 289, this is the property ombudsman bill. I just wanna let you know where it ended up.
Yeah.
So the law before this bill was introduced was if someone goes to the ombudsman and the ombudsman issues a decision that's in favor of the developer, and the city essentially does not follow that ombudsman decision, so it forces the developer to litigate the issue. And if the court substantially agrees with the ombudsman decision, saying that the developer got it right, then the law before this bill took effect was the court could impose attorney's fees, and if the court found that the city knowingly and intentionally acted in bad faith, that they could impose a $250 penalty per day fine. The thing that changed was they added as another consequence of the city intentionally acting in bad faith is consequential damages, which would likely mainly be interest on holding these developments over because, litigation takes time. And it's from the date of the ombudsman opinion to the date of the court opinion. But for big developments, you could imagine Olympia-sized development, some of the consequential damages, interest that they're paying, holding that property over, it could be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. For smaller developments, it's not as substantial, but just fortunately, this doesn't come up very often, and the concern on the city side was the developers are just gonna be using this as a hammer to get what they want, as a threat. But we moved the consequential damages to knowingly and intentionally, which is a higher burden for them to meet, so. SB 91, as Nathan mentioned earlier, this is the Municipal Officers Compensation Bill. Well, it started off as looking at mayors and councils and having a public hearing until they realized that that's already a requirement in the law. So then they morphed it to, we wanna make sure that any municipal officer, such as the city manager, city attorney, department heads, deputies, they also have to go through the public hearing process if you do any compensation increases. So now, as Nathan mentioned, we'll be having a hearing on those increases when they come up.
Is that
It's just salary increase.
It's
COLA,
any,
that's
well, it's
merit.
any
Insurance.
insurance?
If insurance goes up,
Isn't it already a matter of public record?
it is.
So I don't understand what the changes.
Solution looking for a problem.
If you wanna know, you can ask, look it up, go grab whatever, you can get the information.
You
It's
can
not
go to
secret.
Transparent Utah and figure out anyone's salary and their benefits.
It's not secret, so I'm like, why was there a piece of
It'll be good to
legislation
complain
for
about it now before it gets implemented.
And that's the purpose of the bill, is trying to give the residents notice before, like specifically that we're gonna be having these increases. I think this will mainly affect the smaller towns where you have a lot more local residents attend meetings that are more involved in the city just because they do know everyone. I'm thinking the bigger cities, it might not be as big of a problem, but we'll see.
Remember, the focus is whether or not it looks good, sounds good, or feels good, not whether it does good. Right, that's definitely down on the list of priorities for the legislators.
Unless it's hiding.
Do they?
I hope they're listening, cause I just wanna get the
Unless
call.
you're hiding your calendar,
Yeah.
then it's okay.
Yeah.
The government's always listening.
Is there a bill that does it for
They don't
their
care.
salaries
They're
too?
not listening.
They were busy hiding their calendars.
Yeah. You know, I don't mean to be cynical about it, but it's silly the amount of legislation that gets put in place that just makes cities' operations way more difficult that accomplish absolutely nothing.
Well, yeah.
It just, accomplish making meetings longer and more cumbersome to accomplish something that's already public record.
And noticed to the public too. The last one that I have on here is SB 185. This is the residential building amendments. This bill allows for third-party inspectors to be utilized. But this can only be triggered if the city's required to have an inspection within 3 days of a developer requesting it. If the city does not meet that 3-day deadline, then the developer can request from a predetermined list that the city has, one of the inspectors on that list. So that way for cities that may they might have a lot of permits at the time and not have the capacity, but ultimately they can move that permitting process along. The big concern on this one was allowing developers to pick their own inspectors. It's akin to a restaurant picking their own health inspector, which you can see the problems there. But hopefully with the city having a pre-designated list that mitigates those problems. So that's kind of where we ended up on that one. This was a heavily debated bill.
It really doesn't, Catherine's not here, we don't really have issues with that, is my understanding, right?
We got enough staffing and we do third party if we don't have staff.
Yeah, if we were short, we would use
Yeah.
a third party anyways,
And
so.
like I've been told that.
And most cities do that. There are some, I dug into it a little bit, but there are some larger cities and some particular cities that have issues with this.
Sure.
And that's why the House Home Builders Association was pushing for it. I did look at the voting record too, on the rep side and the Senate side. It's very telling.
Yeah.
Who was there and not there and who said yay and nay. But it could become an issue down the road for sure.
Yes,
The
our
bigger
kids are
issue-
walking back on the list of approved inspectors.
Yeah, the bigger issue is developers calling for inspection and our inspectors show up and then they're not
They're
ready.
not ready, yeah,
So
exactly.
that was a part of the discussion.
You
but-
still bill for that though, right?
No, well, no,
Well,
it's part of their package,
fee,
yeah.
so we've been in discussions and even the league has talked about how do we start collecting some of that data so that we have it.
Yeah, I don't know, I know a person who inspected for the VA and when you went out, whether it was ready or not, you wrote your report and you billed for the inspection.
So-
Your time.
Sometimes some cities are implementing a reinspection if you're not ready or it's
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff
I
like
think
that, but
that's-
I don't know, we haven't looked at that yet.
We have a fee, we just haven't charged it
Yeah.
in years, we go out, was it $40 or something like that?
It's minimal.
It's hard to collect it. Yeah.
CFO.
One of the challenges we also see that on some of these bigger inspections, essentially they're relying on us to be the quality control. Like it's just obvious stuff you see, Catherine told me and all the inspectors, lawn, you see the same air, house after house, and you keep telling them, and they're just doing the same thing each time. They're not spending time to fix it or to catch their own crews, they're letting us do it.
Is that your last one?
That was my last one.
So
I don't know
maybe-
if there's any,
Yeah.
Cody's here, he might have.
I'm sure there's police ones that we would love to
police
hear.
updates.
I mean, most of it is pretty innocuous. We did spend some time, and the chief was part of a task force to kind of codify some issues that we're seeing with road rage and some of the traffic related things. And so the bill that was passed will give us some better tools to deal with that. The big one that we've spent most of the session working on is the school safety bill. The impact to us, it's gonna have impact to us. The financial impact is primarily with the school districts. However, we are to be involved in school threat assessment and the management and training of some of those employees, depending on what the school district decides to do with their statutory requirements now. So the final version of the bill that passed requires every school, public, private, charter, K through 12, to have either an SRO, a guardian, an armed guardian, or the district has to have a contract with an armed security company assigned to that school. Now, when they have to be there, kind of started out way on one side of the pendulum, and in the final version of the bill, essentially left it up to the state security chief to determine based on the security threat assessment for each individual school when those people have to be there. So Now that we have the language that outlines all the requirements, like I said, most of them lie with the district, some of them are gonna be up to us to be involved in some training and certification and monitoring of some of that. We're in negotiations and discussions with the school districts, our charter schools, as well as our partners, the 5 cities that are in the Jordan School District. Obviously, we wanna make sure we're on the same page and that we're not operating differently. So those things are ongoing. There is a chance, based on how the district decides to move forward, that we'll end up having to bring that interlocal back to you for an amendment, depending on what the district decides they want to do. And then we'll have to deal with our charter schools and private schools individually on how they're going to meet the requirements of the statute. A couple of really good things that came out of that bill. One is about $100 million for grants for school safety improvements, specifically dealing with cameras, alarm systems, communications equipment, some things that we have been trying to push the schools for years to make some serious investments in. They're now required to do that, and the state ponied up some money to help facilitate that, so we should see some movement on that. And the second big piece that will be very helpful to us is the statewide standardization of response protocols to threats in schools. And so the state security chief, in coordination with the 29 county sheriffs, has to develop what essentially will be adopted as a statewide standard response to any type of an active threat or incident at a school. It doesn't necessarily have to be a shooting incident. Any type of incident that causes a threat to the school will have to have a standard response protocol now. So some really good things. There's definitely some work to be done. Those threat assessments, the onus is on the county. However, we will be intimately involved with those threat assessments with the schools that are in our area, and then bring some information back as that evolves. We have until the school district has until December 31st to finish their threat assessment. The bill technically goes into effect on May 1st with all the other bills. However, they provided them some time throughout the first half of next school year to work through some of these requirements. So what you will see, well, I don't know if I should say that, but there's a good possibility that if you live in an area that is controlled by a taxing entity that runs schools, that you might see a property tax increase this year. So, the local government impact was estimated at about $22 million ongoing. So it's unlikely that any LEA can work through any of these requirements without looking at a property tax increase. So that's probably coming.
So I do have a question, because I think Representative Carucci worked really hard for us on the UTA initiative. So what are we doing about that? How are we gonna implement that in Harriman? This pilot program, when is that coming? When are we gonna be discussing that?
So,
I guess a future agenda.
yeah, so they need to actually create this program so we can apply to it, cause it's an application for a grant.
Okay.
Just trying to pull
We have to
up
apply
what
to
it is.
get our money back that we sent them.
Yeah, so
We
they,
have to be innovative.
yeah, they took a portion of an existing tax and said, okay, we're gonna redirect it. That was the compromise.
So I will, my take on this, in setting with, in a meeting with some of the different, people involved in this happened because, Representative Carucci made it happen. The UTA entity felt very confident that it wasn't gonna go anywhere. And so I would just use that as a message to anyone that if you see something that you feel like is not correct, you do have power in your voice, right? And approach your legislators, approach people that have the opportunity to make a difference, cause just cause you're up against a big entity doesn't mean you don't have a voice. So I just wanna give big kudos to her. It was a fight, and I think that she did it very professionally and dogmatically. She stuck with it, and I think that good things came of it that will benefit our community. And I think we've been years down the road of getting any attention on that if we're not for her pushing up.
And this is actually I think UDOT is actually going to be managing it.
You're not UT.
Yeah, which is good.
Representative or a council member Perucci reached out to me from Riverton and said, I don't know if they reached out to staff yet, but on their, internally over there, they've met and they kind of have they've already started their thought process and want to bring in, because I think the thought process is we work together as the Riverton, Lefdale.
But, and we just finished a big
Right.
study that tells us where our routes should be, so we have some data behind it.
Yeah, a Tri-City kind of.
Steve used to own a bus.
Yeah.
All
You get
applied
that bus
together,
back.
it's a strong, it probably will be, I mean, we haven't seen the grant yet, but it probably could be a stronger grant with three of us.
And maybe we do like we did with the education committee, we have somebody assigned to meet with all three cities and we can work through that as a subcommittee to try and make a plan and then bring it back to council. Yes, you do, you don't spend enough time.
So there, and I think WFRC, a bunch of those groups will be involved, they have to create the actual framework for us to apply.
Okay,
But I think staff, I don't know who they'll be calling. It
I
sounds
just
like
wanted
they'll
to
be
make sure
reaching
that
out
that was very publicly noticed, that was a big deal to get that done and.
Yep.
And she worked hard for our area to accomplish that.
One thing in regards to the fireworks map that's in your consent agenda for tonight. There was some legislation that went through that changed the classification of fireworks from Class C to a Division 1.4G. Because that's how the federal government, I'm glad Woodison is here, because you might know more about it. That's what the federal government classifies
It's
fireworks.
just modernizing the classification of explosives. It's essentially-
However, it's the same thing, but it didn't trickle down to the other bill that also was a fireworks provision bill. I think it was
55.
155 or 330. 333 was the one
333
that
is
changed the
modification,
definitions.
yeah.
So 155, which still refers to them as Class C. In your packet, we still refer to them as Class C because that doesn't take effect till May 1st, but after May 1st, they'll be this Division 1.4G. So.
I know people hate it when I do this, but, on the map, it seems like when I look at that, in just where I live, I'm like, that's an empty field, but all the houses around it are on the approved thing. And it's 200 feet, so was that taken into consideration, you went to the houses, so inside this, there's houses inside that?
That's what it's not.
Right, but, so I'm assuming that that's not just an empty field, there's actually homes inside of that?
Where are you looking at, Sharon?
Like, see, like, oh yeah, like, so this is
I know what you're saying.
Boyd's property, but there's homes that back up to it. And so I'm just wondering if the homes are actually in the hash mark, or if those homes would be restricted because they're they're literally touch the property. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's on the, like typically I remember like, it's the back of the yard, so from their front yard or center of the street,
It's 200 feet
200
from the
feet.
property line.
from the property. So
Right.
then, yeah, they'd be,
But-
so from where you're
So if
looking
it's
at it,
restricted
then
area, you
it's
have to be
restricted.
200 feet from that restricted area.
So I was just questioning that, cause I know there are a few, empty fields and stuff. Did we take into consideration the homes that border that?
We considered it, I don't know if the map, we got into that much detail.
Yeah.
Cause you'd be drawing.
It's hard,
around
yeah.
yellow.
Yeah, because the lines are supposed to be straight.
Yes.
There's some,
So,
Yeah, just well defined, so it's easy for folks to understand it.
so
So they
people
need to
just
be-
not understand this big bold thing you have on here, 200 feet. So if they back up to an empty field, then they are restricted from having fireworks
They
in
have to
their
be
yard.
200 feet away from their property line.
Even if it's not super clear on the map, it's super clear on this great big bold thing that says 200 feet.
Right, yep.
Okay,
Any hazardous condition is 200 feet away.
okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, no close tonight? Okay, I'll look for a motion to.
Adjourn,
To
city
adjourn.
council.
Okay,
That's the second.
shall we? Okay, all in favor? So motion by Steve, second by.
Now we get to saunter, is that what you said?
We're gonna saunter for